Over in Eurasia, a war is edging towards crossroads. And a peace deal is caught in the crossfire of global ambition, battlefield pressure, and political urgency. For months, the world has watched Ukraine as peace options have come up, only to fall apart. This as Russia presses for concessions that Kyiv maintains would carve up its future. Now, as American envoys shuttle between Moscow, Kyiv and Abu Dhabi, the question isn't just whether a deal can be reached, but whether the deal on the table can hold under the weight of mistrust that's been baked in since 2014. Negotiators describe progress, leaders hint at possibilities, but beneath the diplomatic calm, fault lines widen. Territory, troop limits, NATO aspirations. These are issues too large, too emotional, too defining to bend easily. Let's break down what has and hasn't changed so far, and more importantly, why the next decisions may shape Europe's security for a generation. Let's begin with taking stock of what has changed between 2014 and now, and why there are red lines on both sides. Let's put that out. First and foremost, what all has Russia taken control of? First and most important is the Crimean region that was annexed way back in 2014. In fact, that was that is how Russia actually was asked to exit from G8. It was the Crimean annexation when Putin was asked to leave. Next up, Donbas conflict has frozen the lines that exist, and both sides say that they are not willing to concede even an inch here. Donbas is a Russian-speaking area, which Russia says is actually now theirs. Next up, local proxies have actually gained control. They are now more powerful in the area, and that also complicates matters in terms of being able to find any sort of a solution to end this war. Next, the Russian troops' presence has escalated. Now, what does this mean? It means that there is a military momentum going in favor of Russia right now, something that Ukraine and its European allies cannot ignore, given that so much has already been lost on both sides. A full-scale invasion redraws front. That's a reality that all politicians, all leaders on all sides are fully aware of. Ukrainian counteroffensives have also reclaimed ground. There have also been a lot of drone attacks that have come in. In fact, even now in the last 24 hours, Russia has said that 56 unmanned drones it has been able to shoot down. A lot of this is the counteroffensive that is coming in from the Ukrainian side. Moscow has fortified the occupied regions, the regions that it managed to gain control of very early into the conflict when it started, believe it or not, in February 2022. Kyiv has secured Western guarantees. There's also been a fresh IMF loan that it has got to be able to rebuild some of its economy, even as Ukraine is now looking to push ahead in terms of producing some of its air defenses on its own. All of this requires money that it is getting right now. Those European funding lines are on, but battlefield remains fiercely contested, and that needs to be understood in its entirety, because there are people there, there are lives at stake, all of which are getting lost for every minute that is lost when a peace deal is not being finalized. Now, so after more than a decade of shifting these borders, drone skies, and a battlefield that refuses viewers to stay still, the question facing negotiators whether the peace proposal will be allowed to stand tomorrow. Territory has changed hands, loyalties have hardened, and alliances have deepened. This report takes you straight inside those talks, the sticking points, and the three possible outcomes that could define the future of the region and possibly the world.
For the first time since the full-scale invasion, negotiators say they are within reach of a framework. It's not a final peace, but the scaffolding for one. Behind closed doors in Geneva, Abu Dhabi, Kyiv and Moscow, diplomats sift through words that carry the weight of entire nations. Three sticking points, each as heavy as the war itself. And now, the three possible endings negotiators are gaming out. Outcome 1, Ukraine and Russia accept a realignment. One that could freeze the conflict, codify new borders, reduce attacks, and open the doors to reconstruction. But it comes with compromises both sides will struggle to sell at home. Outcome 2. Ukraine accepts, Russia rejects. The war continues, but with Moscow isolated diplomatically. The scenario could bring heavier sanctions, more Western weapons to Kyiv, and a longer grind with no clear off-ramp. And finally, outcome 3. Both reject. Talks collapse, attacks intensify, winter becomes a weapon again. And the war, already redefining European security, deepens into a prolonged standoff with unpredictable consequences. Across Ukraine, people hope, fear and wait. Across Russia, the Kremlin weighs gains against risks, pressures against legitimacy. And across Western capitals, the urgency is real. In the corridors of international diplomacy, deals often end wars. But only strong deals keep them from returning.
Burzeen Wagmar, who's the Center for Iranian Studies, SOS, at the University of London, joins me live on the broadcast. Let me start by asking you, Mr. Wagmar, what are your expectations out of yet another attempt for a peace deal? Steve Witkoff likely to speak to President Putin. How optimistic are you?
Not very optimistic. The only silver lining to the cloud is that this 28-point plan that was proposed last week is now shelved, thankfully, which is practically dictated in Moscow with Putin's maximalist demands, and has been now replaced by what is known as a 19-point plan, which has gained critical mass. Following talks in Geneva between Andrei Yermak, who's of the Ukrainian head of presidential office, and Secretary Marco Rubio, followed by secret talks in Abu Dhabi on Monday night between Army Secretary Driscoll and Kirilo Budanov, that is the Ukrainian Military Intelligence Directorate's head. What we now are envisaging is the following as such, that the automatic veto on NATO membership has gone, no Western troops to be stationed permanently in Ukraine, which was forwarded by Putin adamantly, is going to be vaguely put out. It's not going to be an all-out ban for all times. Putin will have to live with that aspect. Then there's the question of full amnesty for war crimes has been shelved. That has been scrapped completely from the original 28-point peace plan. And then the sticking point and the sore point is, of course, Donbass, for which Ukrainians have paid blood and money for over 11 years. The question is, Ukraine has said that it will continue pursuing it through diplomatic means in order to, overcome the occupation. So that has been put forward so far. And Ursula von der Leyen, the commissioner chief in Strasbourg, mentioned also this week on the question of reparations. 185 billion pounds worth of assets of Moscow are frozen, as we know.
Okay.
And that is being dragged because Belgium has brought up the fact that should we pursue it to the fullest, Moscow could mount legal challenges. And then there's the worry also that ultimately European taxpayers would have to shoulder it. But an options paper with legal documentation is to be put out by the EU around late December. So we have to see as to what pans out on that as well.
All right, Mr.
Those are the
Wagmar,
latest
hold your thought there. You've highlighted some of those important points in the 19-point formula that's been put up on the table, but comes in the backdrop of Russia very clearly saying that there's only little room for negotiations. They have their red lines, and they've told those red lines to negotiators much in advance. So what are we really then looking at?
We're looking at the fact that the maximalist demands from the 28-point plan, which is practically dictated in Moscow and okayed by President Trump, is not going to be pursued to the fullest. So Russia may put a brave face, as Dmitry Peskov has been doing, and says that it's premature to talk about any peace plan. But he's got a point there. It is premature because obviously the Europeans are not going to completely cave in, since their peace is completely in peril too. Because the fact is that Moscow still looks upon Europe, never mind Ukraine, as a sphere of influence.
Finally, then I want to ask you this, that there are deal breakers on both sides, and that is essentially Donbass, and that is essentially the territory that has come under Russian occupation, under Russian control since 2022. How are negotiators really going to solve this? How is Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son really going to solve that?
But they're not, because they're completely out of their depth. All they have been doing is taking dictation from Putin, as I mentioned, the maximalist demands. And Mr. Witkoff has also been known to actually manipulate Russian negotiators in how to speak favorably and press for a better position for Moscow towards and how to play Mr. Trump, literally his own boss. That has been leaked in a video, as we've seen in the last few hours. So that goes to show that Mr. Witkoff's standing is very, very questionable. And quite frankly, he's been an abysmal negotiator.
So if I am, let's say, somebody in the European capital, either in London or in Paris or in Berlin, looking at how these parlays are going on, I want to be part of it, even as the writing is on the wall that very little is actually going to come out of it. So what can some of these European allies do to end the war?
That is a blunt point to be stated right away, Gauri, in that the Europeans have been blindsided throughout these recent talks, be it in Abu Dhabi or Geneva. That is a fact where they have, been not added up to much. Despite discussions at the G20 summit in South Africa between the German Chancellor and the British Prime Minister, at least something has come of it, in that we've had some pushback, some talking points given to Zelensky, which is why we've seen the 28-point plan now shelved and revised with this 19-point plan. But still, it is a very ugly deal, which will see Ukraine whittled off and its sovereignty very much questionable in times to come.
All right, Mr. Bakmar, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks much for speaking to me on Fault Lines. Well, viewers, if you take off your blinkers to see how things are unraveling right now, there are multiple parleys that are taking place. Transatlantic efforts to end this war have expedited. Everybody wants to be on Donald Trump's right side because they want to extract the best possible deal, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's the European allies, whether it's Russian President Vladimir Putin himself. But the fact is, Moscow has drawn those red lines very deep, leaving little room for negotiation, which means that even if Trump is on your side, he may not have an answer on how to end this war, at least not immediately.